Hi, boys and girls, welcome back. It is now Tuesday. So, today, all you're going to have to do is listen to the story of the anthology, and then you will be able to do a writing activity I have on slides for you. The grammar lesson will come tomorrow, so you can look forward to that. Also, don't forget that today we have our Zoom workout, so make sure you wear something appropriate, okay? Um, Things, we'll just get started. Remember, our essential question this week is how do traditions connect people, right? So, how do traditions connect us to people, whether it's your family, a friend, maybe you share the same traditions as someone, a neighbor or something like that. So, we're going to read a little bit about that. The story we're reading is called The Game of Silence by Louise Erdrich, illustrated by Joel Spector. So we're going to read how Omakayas learns that her way of life could change. Now, this is about a Native American tribe. There's kind of a lot of words in here that maybe we don't really know, so they actually gave us a glossary. And if we look at this genre, it's historical fiction. Remember, maybe based on true events or true, like, for example, this might be a real tribe, but the characters in it are probably not real. So we're gonna look at the glossary of Ojibwe words. That's the name of the tribe. So the first one is Asim Ig, a pile of stones. Then Iya means yes. Gego means stop that. Makakun means containers made of birch bark. And Makazina is footwear usually made from moose hide or deer skin, often trimmed with beads or fur. Okay, so we're gonna get started. And while we're reading this, I want you to think about, what's a problem that our main character faces, and what's the solution. Also, what do they say about traditions in this story? What are some traditions they practice? That's everything that I'm going to ask you to talk about in your writing once, guys. So think about that. But we'll get started. In 1850, 9-year-old Omakayas, an Ojibwe girl, realizes her family's life near Lake Superior is about to change. After being forced off their land, her cousins, the Raggedy Ones, have arrived, exhausted and starving. While the adults discuss serious matters in the lodge, Omakayas and the other children in her tribe must play a game of silence. So, words, 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 pressing up from her stomach, trembling on her lips, words buzzing in her throat like caught bees, banging in her head, harsh words, angry words, sounds boiling up in her like sap, wild things she couldn't let out. Yow! A kick from her brother almost caused Omakayas to blurt an exclamation. No. Omakaya sealed her lips together in a firm line and glared at her brother with all of the force pent up inside. If the fire from her eyes could scorch him, Pinch would be the first to yell out. Then he would lose the game of silence. But Pinch was used to receiving furious looks from his family. He knew just how to respond. First he looked innocently at Omakayas, as though he was ever innocent. He pretended he was unaware of the raging energy stuffed up inside of his sister. Then, as Omakayas bored her eyes at him with increasing intensity, he lolled out his tongue and twisted his face into a deranged and awful mask. His features shifted into one ugly and absurd face after the next until suddenly Omakayas just about almost laughed. Just in time she clapped her hand to her mouth, closed her eyes, concentrated. Yes, yeah. She would be a stone, a scenic, a pile of stones, each one harder and quieter than the next. She would be silent and more silent yet, and in spite of her annoying brother, she would win. She kept her eyes closed, put her forehead on her knees, thought stone, 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 a scene, filled her mind with the sound of falling rain, which was easy. Outside it was not just raining, but pouring down and drenching cold, miserable early summer shower. The rain had lasted for days, since the Raggedy Ones arrived. That was another thing. Besides, Pinch, Omakaya's couldn't stand rain any more. The water made mush of tender new ground around her family's birch bark house. Droplets hissed through the roof vent into the fire, driving stinging smoke into her eyes. Everyone around her was affected. Nokomis's old bones ached and she creaked like a tree every time she moved. The watering wind sent coughs racking through her mother's chest. It was too wet to play outside and cold when it would have been warm. Worst of all, Omakaya's was stuck with Pin. So the game they're playing is kind of like the quiet game where your parents say the first person who talks loses. So her brother Pinch and Omakayas are trying to play the game and they're trying to make each other lose. He nudged her. Omakayas almost slugged him in return, but controlled herself. She had enough of him to last her whole life. She opened her eyes a fraction, and her eyes went wide in shock. Somehow Pinch had got hold of her beloved doll, and he was making it teeter on the cliff of his knees. Omakais bit her lips so hard it hurt. Pinch walked her doll to the edge of his knees, then teasingly back. If only Mama was here. If only she would return. Nokomis concentrated on her work so hard it was impossible to distract her. Omakais pretended to shut her eyes again, but cleverly watched until just the right moment to snatch back her doll. Sighed as though she was falling asleep, and then with a flash she grabbed. Taken by surprise, Pinch couldn't react quickly enough to hold on, and Omakais triumphantly clutched her doll. She stuck it down the neck of her dress. There, safe. Inside she laughed, but she didn't make a single sound. Not a chirp. Not so much as a mouse's squeak. She was going to win the game of silence. She just knew it. Pinch was now poking little twigs into the fire in the center fire pit, watching them burn. Matthias tried not to notice him, but his head was so big and fuzzy. His hair sprang out with its own energy. Crafty eyes and his tough round face calculated his sister's endurance. He was surely cooking up some mischief. Sure enough, Pinch drew the burning wand from the fire and laid it innocently next to her ankle, as though she didn't know that it would scorch her if she moved the slightest inch, and make her cry out first and instantly lose the game. At him. Giggle, Pinch, she merely warned, but bit her lip. "I," he mouthed the taunt, making her an impossibly irritating face that almost broke Omakaya's discipline. Luckily, just at that second, Omakaya decided to forfeit the game and to smash her little brother over the head with a big tin soup ladle. The visitors arrived. "They are here," said their grandmother. "You can quit the game until after we oops. Ah!" Omakai's exploded with such a wild sound of rage that Nokomis jumped and retreated, unnerved by how sorely he'd tested his sister. Omakais breathed out in relief. These visitors were her friends and cousins, Twilight, Littleby, and two Strike Girl. They had brought the boy she called in her mind the angry one. Her cousins were her favorite friends, the ones she counted on. Twilight was much like her name, quiet and thoughtful. Littleby was funny and bold. Two Strike was tough. She could do anything a boy could do, usually better. Since her mother had died, she was wilder than ever. Even her father had not been able to handle Two Strike and had left her with Auntie Muskrat. But Auntie Muskrat had had no success in taming Two Strike. Sometimes she was so fierce she outdid everyone. It was a challenge to play with her. The girls had learned to sew and bead together, gathered berries, and helped their mothers clean fish. They also learned early on how to tan hides, a task that Omakai's despised, and now too her sister Angeline was home. Omakai's grinned with satisfaction, delightfully outnumbered by girls, and would pout, creeping to Mama's side when she arrived and turning into a baby, hoping to be pampered with tidbits of meat and maple sugar. Now everyone, the children and their parents, squeezed into the lodge. They had made the lodge extra big that summer for visitors. For the first time it was packed entirely full, but there was enough room for everyone. Even the angry one found a space to sit. He glared from a little spot against the wall. Together they ate rich venison soup from the shallow birch bark macacoon they'd brought along with them. Two other men squeezed in, important men. Old Tallow entered, huge and rangy and smelling of wolf. She settled herself while outside her ferocious dogs stood guard, unmoving and alert even in the pelting rain. Each of Old Tallow's feet seemed to take up as much space as a small child. Matthias didn't mind. Rarely but completely she loved the fierce old woman. It starts with Omakayas and her brother playing a game, and now they have visitors. So let's make a prediction. Why do you think these visitors are there? Each visitor brought a gift for the pile that the children who won the game of silence would choose from that night. For it was an important night. With the raggedy ones came serious doings, difficult questions, and impossible meals. Great attention was needed. The grown-ups needed to counsel, think, observe the facts without having to shush small children. The children could tell how important the meeting was from the degree to which their silence was required. The pile of treats was the best. There was a bag of marbles, some actual glass, not just clay, a pair of narrow moccasins that Omakayas thought just might fit her, one doll elaborately dressed in a tiny set of breeches and leather coat, a sharp knife, a deer knuckle game, two duckbills of maple sugar tied together with split jack pine root, 6 red ribbons, a little roll of flowered cloth, 8 tiny bells, 1 small bow, and 6 arrows tipped with real brass points from a tray kettle. The arrows were fletched with sharp black and yellow feathers of a bird that the island where they lived was named for, golden-breasted wood. Old Tallow must have brought them. What treasures! The children examined them breathlessly, each picking out one particular prize they meant to win. Little Bee, of course, wanted the doll. Two-Strike Girl the bow and arrows. Pinch coveted the knife, but he was torn by greed for the maple sugar, and the need for marbles to replace those he'd lost. The angry one did not deign to move from his spot or look at the gifts. No doubt he'd have no problem winning the game. As for Twilight, quiet and serene, she had no trouble playing the game, and she would be content with anything. Machias wanted the ribbons, the bells, and the marbles too, but she settled on the moccasins because she had watched her grandmother make them so carefully. They were fancy with velvet ankle cuffs, tops beaded with flowers like little white sparkling vines, worth her silence. Remember, those are shoes, right? Now the grown-ups are ready to start talking. Nokomis sang the song of the Game of Silence 4 times, nearly catching Pinch at the end. Then she turned away from them too, absorbed in the talk. Machias looked longingly at Twilight, and her cousin made a sad and frustrated face. With her favorite cousin so close and her annoying brother so near, it was difficult to play. If only they could talk. At first the girls communicated by mouthing words and moving their eyes, but the temptation to laugh was too great. They turned away from each other unwillingly. Omakais listened to the rain, the solid drumming and hissing. Then she listened to the fire crackling and sighing. She watched the beautiful and changing glow of the coals. At some point, Omakais couldn't tell exactly when her attention was caught by something her father said, and then she noticed that her cousin Twilight was also listening to the grown-ups' conversation. Soon they all couldn't help but listen. They leaned forward, straining to hear every sound, almost forgetting to breathe. That night, for the first time, everybody got their prizes. Nobody lost the game of silence. For that night, they knew the threat of a much bigger loss. They would all fear to lose something huge, something so important that they never knew that they had in the first place. Who questions the earth, the ground beneath your feet? They'd always accepted it, always here, always solid. That something was home. So it's talking about something they're gonna lose. Think about something they could lose, not a game, but something more important, right? And that's pretty much the end. So basically, this story is about how this Native American tribe has lived in this part of the country for so many years, right? And then we have, like colonizers. Like we were learning a little bit about that. But basically, people from another country who come and we're trying to move the Native Americans out of their land. So what happens is that they're playing this game because the grown-ups have to talk. And then while they're talking, the kids learn the news about them losing their land. So while you're doing your writing, think about, maybe it didn't share some exact traditions other than the game. But think about what happens when people have to move out of their homes, when they get taken away from places they care about. And so your job today is to write a summary about what this story was about. Um, and also I want you to think about like how would you feel if you lived somewhere for so long and then some random stranger came and said you have to leave, right? Like how would you feel if you were in that situation? And I want you to write about that too. And just think about, how Omakayas and all her family might have felt in this situation. But that's basically it for today's anthology. Like I said, grammar lesson will come tomorrow, and we have a workout during the lesson. I will see you all later.